When I was a teenager, I decided that I wanted to belong to a particular choir, and I joined the choir that was close by to my home, and it was fantastic. I loved it. My voice had changed from, the boy soprano voice to the bass voice, and I ended up becoming like a second bass. If you know anything about choir and singing and the parts, that would be like a really low bass. It was a lot of fun. The conductor of the choir was Norwegian, and that's significant, and you'll see why in a second when I share what happened. We were in the middle of rehearsal, and all of a sudden he just stopped, right? And Norwegians have a great sense of humor. They also love to tell stories, but they're kind of musing people, not amusing people, but musing people in the sense that they love to just muse and tell you a parable and tell you something that's kind of an interesting insight, and they don't mind you just pondering on it a little bit. And so I have lots of Norwegian friends, and they enjoy this a lot, right? So here I am. I'm in this rehearsal, and the conductor stops it all, and he's not happy. So I think it's because we weren't following him exactly. We were maybe doing our own thing, reading the music as best as we could, and trying to go our own way. So then he tells us a story, right? And this is the story. He just said, once there was a man who was on a pathway, and he was walking through this journey, and he came to a fork in the road, and he had a walking stick, and so he didn't know whether he should go left or whether he should go right. He wanted some clarity in his life as to where he was supposed to go. So he took this stick, the walking stick, and he threw it up in the air, and the walking stick landed, and he was pointing to the right. He thought to himself, I should do this again. So he threw the stick up in the air, and this time it was facing again to the right. And he's like, well, I'm just not sure if that's the right direction. So third time lucky, and then I will follow the way of the stick, effectively. So he threw the walking stick in the air, and it landed, and this time it was facing left. And so the gentleman decided that what the signs were telling him is that he should go left. The conductor just stopped, told us the story. He didn't laugh through it. He just shared the story, and then literally, as soon as he finished that story, he kind of just stepped back into it and said, all right, let's begin. And I was a young boy, and I was thinking, I'm not quite sure what the parable or the meaning of the story was, but it was significant, right? It was like there was something inside that story that maybe the person wanted, eventually I got this, maybe the person wanted some clarity about what they were supposed to do, but they didn't want all the clarity to be exactly the way that the conductor wanted it to be, right? So they wanted clarity, but it wanted it to be prescribed in a particular direction. Whereas the conductor was saying, you should follow where I'm going to take you. And I was like, I don't know, maybe that's what the story was inside there. Well, there's a really great story in the Bible, in the Second Testament. The Bible's divided up into two, First and Second Testaments. And in the Second Testament, there's a story written by a guy called John the Apostle. He's actually the last apostle standing at this point when he writes this story. So all the other disciples, all his friends have died. Jesus has resurrected. He's gone to heaven, and they're just like, they're wondering what's going to happen next. There's a lot of ambiguity. And he looks around and, he's thinking to himself, I better tell the story to help to give some clarity. So he picks certain moments from his memory and certain moments from the other gospel writers and pulls them together into the Gospel of John, which is, for me, one of my most, my favorite gospels. If I have to have a favorite, I just love it. I love all the others, but the Gospel of John just has so much richness inside it. And there's this epic verse, there's lots of great ones, but there's this epic verse in the middle, John chapter 14, and this is what it says. I'm going to read it to you because it's just so simple, beautiful, and pretty fantastic. There's a guy called Thomas, one of the disciples, and this is what it says in John chapter 14, verse 5. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, that's a really good question. He says to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. And that's it. He says a whole load of other things after that, but that's his answer. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And you're thinking to yourself, I know, when I looked at this text here, I thought to myself, what exactly is going on here? Well, there's clearly some tensions inside this text that's going on that we're probably missing. So let me just paint the picture for you so you kind of get the bigger scope of what's taking place inside here. And you'll understand why it's important for them to have clarity. At least that's what they were seeking, right? Because we love clarity. They wanted clarity. John's writing this gospel to give them clarity. So it seems that this is the clearest answer that Jesus could give. I'm the way, I'm the truth, and I'm the life. Well, this is what has happened. It's this week. It's this final week. Jesus is going to actually go to the cross and die at the end of this week. So his mind is all set on the absolute mission of what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to tell people that there is another way to live, to look after people, to love people, and he's going to go and defeat death, which is a phenomenal thing that we all need and love and are very grateful for. Now, the disciples, his team, they're all upset. They're all upset. They're like, can I be the one who's the next promotion? Can it land with me? I mean, they all want something greater to happen to them. And they're squabbling, literally, in that final week. They don't understand what's going on. They haven't paid attention, but they're like fighting back and forth. And Jesus does this incredible thing where he washes their feet, which was just unheard of. It was just horrible. He washes their feet to say, look, you're all equal. I'm going to serve you. You can serve each other. This is actually how we can live a different way. I want you to learn how to love and to serve other people. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. So he does this. He kind of calms things down. He then tells them that, there's some trouble coming up ahead. It's going to be pretty rough. It's going to be hard for some of you. And he tells them that he's going to leave. That's why Thomas is like, well, where are you going? Where are you going? Well, this is what Jesus actually says to them, and I'm going to go back into the Bible here, in the Second Testament again, in the Gospel of John. And Jesus says to them, when they're all worried and they've got a lot of anxiety, they're stressed, they don't know what's going to happen in the future, he says in John chapter 14, verse 1, let not your hearts be troubled. Let not your hearts be troubled. Now, some translators actually have said that you can actually, when you look at the original language, it actually probably reads better this way, let not your hearts be too troubled. In other words, of course we worry, of course we think about complex things, of course we want to know the way forward, but he's saying here, look, don't let your hearts be too troubled, right? It's going to be okay. That's what he's saying to us more than anything, that I'm going to help you through this. So then Thomas, when he hears this, he's like, all right, I'm not to be troubled. I should have some way forward. Give me the answer. And Jesus gives that Yoda-esque like answer, as Jesus was so famous for, which obviously had much deeper meanings inside it. But at the time, they didn't quite capture it. Hence, John wrote this down to say, let me remind you of that amazing moment when Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. I mean, just phenomenal, right? I work and I serve inside the Office of Mission. It's phenomenal. We are nimble, we're fast, we change, we do all sorts of amazing things, and it's a lot of fun, right? And as I've been inside this area here, I got to meet and I get to meet so many different leaders and friends all over the place, right? And as I'm meeting all these people, I've started to learn and pick up part of the culture and part of the language that people tend to use all over the place. And I'm just like, oh, it must be like some kind of like orientation thing. Although it didn't happen in my orientation, where they said, you should use this phrase all the time. So one of those phrases, the funny one that I hear all the time is, that's a great call out. That's a great call out. Oh, I appreciate that call out. And what they're saying is that, that's a good point. We didn't think of that. We should have thought of that. But thank you for doing that. And instead of saying those other words, we just use the phrase, great call out. And we use this all the time. It's actually an affirming way to kind of like encourage conversation and dialogue. The second is that I've noticed that people want clarity, and they're constantly talking about, I would like some clarity. And the response from certain friends of mine is that we're giving you clarity, and we also are giving you some ambiguity. And in fact, what we'll often say is that within that ambiguity, there is a matrix relationship. And people are like, what? I want clarity. I don't want the ambiguity, and I don't want the matrix. I just want to know exactly what it is that I'm supposed to do. Well, do you really? I mean, really want to know exactly down to the minute? Well, I mean, where would all the creativity in it happen if you didn't have some of that matrix relationships taking place all the time where you're learning to collaborate and grow and change? I mean, do you really want clarity? Well, we kind of do, don't we? I mean, in some cases, I mean, if you're going to marry somebody, you want absolute clarity. Do you have it? No. You're going to invest in the markets and you're going to invest some funds and you want absolute clarity. My stock will always just rise. No, there's no guarantee in that, right? You're going to buy a home. I mean, you want clarity, but is it the right home to buy? Is it the right job to take? Is it the right relationship to be in? I mean, we want clarity, but truth is that that's not reality. I just realized that rhymed, clarity and reality. But we'll just skip on from that. I mean, that is not reality, right? That is not what life is like. Hence, we learn inside the matrix that we actually need to trust each other. We need to trust those who are actually leading, that they are at the 80,000 feet and they're thinking forward, and you need to trust each other and collaborate. And this is the tension of the ambiguity. Even though some things, absolutely, clarity would be great. But inside the clarity, there's always going to be the space to grow. There's always going to be the space to be able to say, I'd like to have a little bit of that matrix, that ambiguity, so I can expand myself a little bit further inside that. It's difficult, though, to kind of take that in all the time and to live in that space. And this is what I think Jesus was saying in those words when he said, I am the way. He's saying, I am the destination, right? Don't worry about it. Be troubled, but be a little bit troubled, but only be a little bit troubled because you got to understand, I am the way, I am the destination, I am the truth. You're saying, I have everything to reveal to you. Just hang in there. I know all the data. I have everything. I have the reality of what is going to take place. And then he says, I am the life. And what he's saying is that he's the adventure. That's what he's saying. And this is what John really wanted to capture. John wanted to capture that in a place of ambiguity, in the place when you're just not sure what's going to happen, God is saying, I know life, I understand life, and I'm with you in there. I was in the middle of a complex decision in my life. It was nuanced. It was, if you want to talk about ambiguity, this was ambiguity to the 10th degree. And I just didn't know what the final way forward was with this. I happened to be in the car driving a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a long time to the airport to drop him off. And it's like when you're in the car and you're on the way to the airport, your conversation strikes up in different places and you end up discussing all sorts of things. And so I started to share with my friend a little few of the pieces of the stress that I was under, the ambiguity that I was under, and not sure, what decision I should make. And in particular, what I was focusing on is like, how do you know if you're following God in this? How do you know you're following the true north, the true compass in your life, right? This is what was the tension that actually I was just wrestling through. So as I'm wrestling through this, thinking about this, I said to my friend all these things. And you know what he said? He looked over to me as I was driving. He said, God doesn't have a blueprint for your life. And I was like, well, okay, that's good. He says, God has a blue sky. That's all it is. In other words, God doesn't say you have to do this and this and this, which is the kind of clarity that we would like sometimes. Just tell me when to turn left, tell me which way to follow. You have to trust that God is with you in the blue sky where there are so many options that you have before you. But God's with you. He understands because He is the way and He is the truth. And He is the life. And I think that we have that opportunity today, whatever you're doing, to think about the creativity and the opportunity to be able to try and do something different with your life. Just do something and experiment with it and live in that ambiguity and in that matrix relationship while you have some clarity, but live in that space so you can be creative. I just want to wish you an amazing day, and may you be blessed and may you be inspired to try and experiment in that space.